Mike Alcoholic. It reminds me of one of my first meetings that I went to. I didn't have any time, but I was young when I got here. I was 22, so there was a lot of things that I hadn't done. And I think I was sharing some miraculous thing I heard in treatment, thinking that I knew something, and they had already heard it 1,000 times. I was unaware of this, and I think that the old-timer in there, I remember, he said, "I spilt more than you drank." And that intimidated me. It made me feel like I didn't belong. It made me feel like I was being talked down to, and I was. I was being told I didn't belong and I didn't qualify, and that he was basically judging whether I was or was not an alcoholic. And speaking of that, we know now that he was breaking one of our principles, because our book says we do not diagnose anyone an alcoholic. And I thought to myself, that's not a nice thing for an old-timer to say to a young-timer. If I had known then what I know now, I would have said, if you hadn't spilt so much, you would have got here sooner. See, because our book is very clear that to be gravely affected, one does not have to drink the quantities or go down as far as some of us have. And the qualification is the two questions on page 44. Have I ever tried to quit and not been able to be successful? And when I drink, I can't control the amount I take. And even at that young age, I had a few instances that was the truth. And I was able to grasp the truth for myself. So, that brings me to the idea of principles over personalities. And I can't help but think about, when I hear that, the night Dr. Bob died, Bill W. gave a talk. And the guy that introduced him, at the end of that meeting, some of you may have heard it. And you may have also heard at the end of meetings something that is always said, and this contradicts it completely, and it really gives some insight into that 12 tradition where Principles for Personalities comes from, by the way. And he said, please remember that anonymity is the spiritual backbone of all our traditions, ever reminding us to place principles before personalities. Please, what you heard here, take it with you. Who you saw here, please leave that knowledge behind. Help us maintain this spiritual legacy. Now, what they said was, what you heard here, take it with you. Who you saw here, leave it behind. But I've been in 10 million meetings where they say, remember what you heard here and who you saw here, let it leave here when you leave here. And you know what I'm talking about. It sounds like it rhymes, but it's not the way it's supposed to be. So the reason that we study AA history is because lest we forget what things were supposed to mean, and we start saying things that are in direct contradiction to what they were intended. So we are supposed to take what we hear in meetings and go live the other 23 hours of the day with the things that we learn in meetings. The one thing I am not supposed to take out of here is who I saw here. Now that brings me to the important thing of the difference between judgment and assessment, because this is an important thing. And we say, when we talk about the 10th step, and it talks about continue to take personal inventory. I said, well, that's no big deal. I've been taking people's personal inventory for years. And then we say, oh, well, Mike, they're talking about your personal inventory. Or are they? And I'm going to read something that Bill W. said that tells almost the exact opposite. So we get caught into this trap, I do, about the difference between what is judgment and what is assessment. And one, they say I'm not supposed to do ever. And one, should I do? Or do I have a duty to do? And remember I said the word duty because Bill W. used the word duty. And I'm going to read this to you. This comes from page 144, and As Bill Sees It. I highly recommend that you check this out because it's one of the most important things that I've come across that addresses this fact. It's on page 144, and As Bill Sees It, the reason I remember 144 is because it's 12 times 12. It's called blind trust. Most assuredly there can be no trust where there is no love, nor can there be real love where distrust holds its malign sway. Malign means sick. But does trust require that we be blind to other people's motives or indeed our own? Not at all. This would be folly. Most certainly, we should assess the capacity for harm as well as the capacity for good in every person that we would trust. And here's the thing right here. Such a private inventory, this is Bill W.'s words now, not mine. Such a private inventory can reveal the degree of confidence we should extend in any situation. However, this inventory needs to be taken in a spirit of understanding and love. Nothing can so much bias our judgment as the negative emotion of suspicion, jealousy, or anger. So he delineates to me, and this is something that I need to remember, the difference between a judgment and an assessment. One, I don't need to do, and one, it says I have a duty to do to myself, to my own program. I need to make assessments of others, not judgments, assessments of their behavior, and make an assessment of that. Do a private inventory of them. Bill W. says it, not me. To see how much I should trust them. So I'm throwing out there because when I hear principles for personalities, I've heard the things at the end of meetings, how different it was in the beginning. I've heard the discussions about what is judgment, should not do it. What does personal inventory mean, and does it always mean mine? Should I look at other people and what they're doing and judge where I am in this universe based on how other people act? There is absolutely no doubt that I should. Because what happens when I do that is I see other people, how they're acting, and I understand and I learn what I stand for. It helps me to see the parameters of my universe, what's okay and what's not okay. And what I have learned since I've been here is that there's many things that's not okay today after almost 3 decades that were absolutely okay when I got here. That means I've made progress. I make observations of people that have what I don't want. Who is my teachers? Now, we look to our teachers as the one that are supposed to have what we want. No, my teachers need to be everybody. Ones that have what I want and ones that have what I don't want. Because see, that helps me move toward the center where I need to be. I learn what I stand for. Because a man in 1947 on the Senate floor as a chaplain said, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. And what I have found is using these principles that I have talked about and what Bill W. said I must do and what I need to do about what I hear in meetings. I've used those things to help me develop some things that I stand for. So I wanted to go into that because I too had a rattling thing. And I was a little rattled here recently, very recently, like within the last 15 or 20 minutes. And I had to take a look at some things. The only thing I can control is what I do. I can make assessments on what other people do. I've had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps, and I'll pass.